What is it that brought you in here?
Sure. Just interested in finding out what it was like.
Okay. Anybody else? Somebody who's the first time? Back in there? Nobody's volunteering. Okay, over here. Yes.
Mine's a class assignment.
It is a class assignment. Okay. I don't want to be deluded into thinking, there's something magnetic about the place. My name is Michael Mugaku Zimmerman, and I'm Sensei, which means teacher in Japanese. Mugaku is a Buddhist name which you get when you take vows and become a Buddhist, just as Michael is my Christian name that I got when I was baptized. I don't do this for a living. I'm a lawyer. This is, although this is probably the most important part of my life in some ways. How many of you have been here less than 5 times? Okay, pretty substantial number. We just completed a day-and-a-half session, we call it, which is a period of intensive sitting where we're about 25 of us, 28 of us, who came and meditated for a couple hours on Friday night, for about 8 or 9 hours yesterday, and then a couple of hours this morning. And I was going to talk about why we do that, because sometimes people wonder, why did we sit this morning? I mean, what's the point? So I think to do that, I need to start with a little bit, particularly for those of you that are new, with a little bit of orientation to Buddhism and to Zen. Buddhism teaches that essentially people suffer. Okay, this should not be news to anybody. That life is hard. That we don't get the things we want, and the things we have are things we don't want often. You don't want your enemies close, and they're close, and you want your loved ones closer, and they're far away. You want more money, and you don't have it. And other things you have you don't want. That overbearing parent, that spouse that you're arguing with, or your partner that you're constantly in conflict with. So life is suffering in a general sense. That's not to be unduly pessimistic, it's just a fact of life, right? And Buddhism teaches that essentially the reason for that is that we mistakenly believe that we are separate, separate individuals, and that we have desires, and we try to get them in the world, and the world doesn't give them to us. And it's that disjunction between our desires and what the world actually provides us that causes suffering. We have something we want, we're afraid it'll go away. There's something we don't want, we can't push hard enough to get rid of it. And Buddhism teaches that essentially the reason, the source, the fundamental source of that suffering is we have a conception of ourselves that's false. We think of ourselves as permanent. At some deep level we probably think we're immortal, but we certainly think we're permanent. We are who we are, and throughout our life, and that person competes against all other things in the universe for what it wants. If you will, the best metaphor I can think of is that if you drew a circle on the ground and you watered it, whatever grew up there, we tend to think of that's who we are. It grows, it gets watered, the wind comes, the rain comes, the snow comes, the animals try to eat it. It's always competing to stay alive, and then sooner or later it dies. But it just, whatever started in that circle remains there until it's dead. And Buddhism would teach that essentially we're more like if I drew a circle on the water of a slow-moving stream on the surface of it. I think that I'm that circle, right? But as soon as I finish the circle, what's underneath the circle has changed, hasn't it? And I have the illusion, it's like putting a hula hoop on top of a stream. I think I'm the hula hoop, and I think that what's inside there is water, and that's me. But what's inside there is a stream that's moving through. And what's there today isn't there tomorrow. What's there today isn't there in 5 minutes. And what's there is not ultimately different than what's not inside the circle. So if I have an idea that I'm a permanent, unchanging thing that's growing and aging and fighting with the universe for survival, when in fact I'm just a container in which everything changes constantly, and a mind which is just a slice of this instant, and in the next instant there's something different there, that changes how I see the world. That changes how I interact with other people, because I see them as not being different than me. I see them, I understand why they suffer too, because they have this idea, like I do, that I'm, a redwood instead of just being the water that happens to be underneath the hula hoop at the moment. And that if I can shift that perspective and really believe it, and I don't mean believe it up here, because to believe it up here is just another idea, right? It's like thinking I'm a redwood. Well, okay, so I'm not going to think I'm a redwood. I'm going to think I'm a hula hoop in a stream. Gee, that made me feel better. But I have to know it in my gut. I have to behave from it. And if I do, I will meet life in a different way. I will see my desires and my dislikes as, to some degree, products of my mind. My mind that wants to think that I'm permanent, indelible, different than everybody else, and in constant competition with everybody else. Now, at one level it's true, I am. All that's true. I am in competition with everybody. If I didn't eat things, I'd die. If I didn't drink liquids, I'd die. I need things to live in the world. That's true, but there's no danger that you're going to forget that. The danger is you're going to remember it too much. And Buddhism, and Zen in particular, says that what's really true is what's happening in this instant. That's true. Just that, and just that, and just that, and just that. And if you carry an idea, now if you carry the idea of that, that's not true either, is it? Because it's not happening in this moment. It happened a minute ago, it's not here anymore. And if you cling to it, again, we're back to clinging to the idea that you're permanent, unchanging. That everything is constantly changing, and you need to be the one truth that Buddha said, the one thing you can say about life when observed objectively is that everything changes. That's all you can say. That's all you can know for sure, is that everything changes. Everything else is an idea. So, coming full circle, why do we sit? Well, as I say, we don't have to be reminded that we're separate in some ways. I don't have to be reminded that I'm not each of you. I don't have to be reminded that I'm not my children, that they're different, they want to do things differently than I do, or that I need to go to the grocery store and make selections, of the kind of cereal I'm going to eat. I don't have to remember that I'm separate. What I have to try to do is learn that I'm not separate. I have to learn that my ideas about my separateness being real are ideas. So, the reason we sit is because when you sit quietly, with your eyes half closed, not moving, just breathing, there's nothing happening other than what's going on in here and in your body. And when you just sit, what you see is how much is going on. And particularly, how much is going on in your mind.